All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Ann Heath, and I am excited you're here because we have something really special for you today. We're going to be talking about 3 common mistakes churches make when trying to add a digital strategy to their new guest process, and we'll be showing you a better, more effective way to do this. We'll talk more about this later, but if you'd like to get a jump start on this and see exactly what we'll be talking about today, then go ahead, take out your phones, and text the keyword HOPE to 844-285-1815. You'll get a sneak peek of what we'll be talking about a little later and experience it from a new guest perspective. Seriously, I want everyone to get a chance to do this, so even if you're on your phone right now, just quickly switch to your texting app and in the message area, just like you see on the screen here, enter the word HOPE to this number. You'll be walked through exactly what you're seeing on the screen. But if you can't do it right now, that's okay too. You can always try this later. You can write down the information or take a picture of the screen and give it a try when you have a chance. Okay, while you're doing that, let's discuss a few quick house rules. We believe that this content is so valuable that turning your phone on silent or vibrate will be worth it. It has taken us months to put this webinar together as we pulled from years of experience working with dozens of churches because it really does go much deeper than just digital. And while you're at it, if you have not already done so, go ahead and expand this window, grab a pen and paper or something to write with, and pay close attention. I know we all love to multitask, but trust me, this is worth it. As we go along today, you might have some questions. So go ahead and open up the Q&A box and post your questions in there. All questions and comments will be saved, and I promise I will respond to them in the next 24 to 48 hours using the same email you registered for this webinar with. So now that you've had enough time to go through this process yourself, what did you think about the experience? Did it work for you? I promise to talk more about this in just a little bit. Okay, so we have asked you to pay close attention, but just to make sure this is going to be worth your time, here are the people who will benefit the most from this webinar today. Churches who have never used texting for their new guest or follow-up process, but want to learn how they can. For churches who have used some texting before and have had some success, or maybe not very much success at all. Or for churches who are currently using texting and digital connect cards and are getting some good results but are curious to know if they can do even more. So if any of those situations sound like you, then you're in the right place. But if you're still not sure and are curious to know more, then stick around because it will make more sense as we go. All right, so here's what we'll cover today. First, we'll cover 3 common mistakes that churches make when it comes to their new guest process so you can make sure your church is not making those same mistakes. Also, we'll talk about why you do not need to use links and online forms and how this could actually be hurting your chances of connecting with some of your guests. We will also talk about how you can save time and connect with your new guest even better. Just picture being able to automate your new guest process and at the same time improve your guest experiences and also save your staff members and volunteers valuable time. What's even better is you will discover how to automate your own new guest process while ensuring that your guests still feel connected to you. Just imagine the peace of mind you will have knowing each new guest is being taken care of and followed up with and no one is slipping through the cracks. We will cover so much in a short amount of time. I promise you're going to be happy you joined this presentation today. We're even offering bonus credits for anyone who stays to the end of this webinar. And just in case you're wondering who I am, really quick, here's a little bit about me and my journey with Pastor's Line at my own church. I was born in Ohio and raised in Texas, but I have been calling Washington my home since July of 2014. My husband and I have 2 kids and 2 dogs, and we love to explore Washington as much as possible. In 2011, after years of working in logistics, My family and I decided that I would retire from my current job and come home to take on the full-time role of stay-at-home mom. In my spare time, I love to volunteer at my church, and I actually found Pastor's Line while I was helping our assimilations pastor. I stumbled across a CCB recommended webinar, one that was very similar to this one actually, and I just fell in love with it almost instantly. Our church started implementing Pastor's Line to help us communicate better and also to get our existing members and new families more connected and plugged into the life of our church. What set Pastor's Line apart from the other guys out there was that it integrated with Church Community Builder. Now they also integrate with Planning Center and MailChimp and will be adding some other ones soon too. Pastor's Line allowed us to really streamline our process across all of our campuses and take out a lot of the administrative work that was involved with new families and with event signups. It also allowed us to reach more people like me who are a little shy and would much rather text than to have to approach and talk to somebody I don't know yet. I have been in the customer service industry for most of my life, from retail to restaurants to international freight and logistics, and now currently here at Pastor's Line. But I was a customer first, and I still am. I started out exactly where you are right now, on a webinar, wanting more information, and I was excited about what a powerful tool Pastor's Line is and how it could add to and improve the way we did things at our church. And it can do that for your church too. So let's take a quick poll. What part of guest follow-up do you struggle with the most at your church? Are you currently struggling just to follow up with your guests and you can't seem to keep them from falling through the cracks? Have you personally tried to put a follow-up process in place or even tried calling or texting them yourself and it just ended up causing more work than you expected? Or are you struggling with guests not participating or just not completing the process? Are they either stopping halfway through or not filling out your online Connect cards at all? Maybe you can't pinpoint your church's exact struggles, but you know you want to improve this area. I think we can all agree that the struggle is real when it comes to following up with our new guests. We did promise you no fluff, and we're going to keep our word, but first, it's important to define some things and explain the different options churches have to digitalize their guest engagement and follow-up. We need to keep in mind that guests don't come to your church to give you their information. They come to connect with something better. They're there to connect with Jesus. Just to be clear, we aren't claiming to be experts in guest services. There are many other books and experts you can look to for advice on the subject, but we believe that step one in your process is treating people like people and to connect with them on a personal level. Technology doesn't fix that. What technology also doesn't fix is the trust factor. Even if they don't want to give you their information, they're more likely to give it to you if you have met their needs of feeling welcome first. And after you have captured your guest information, using whatever method you choose, it's about communicating just enough to get to the second date, which is to have them return. We will talk about how some churches can over-communicate too. The point is, even with the tools we will show you later on, tools are only tools, but people are people. Your process is yours, but they only work if they are all in unison. The good news is we can help you focus less on the tool and the complex processes and more on the people. Wouldn't that be awesome? So now that we've assured you that we don't think technology is the magic option, what we do know is that it can help us communicate faster and better than ever before. So how has the church adopted technology to engage with and follow up with guests over the years? Next, we're going to talk about the general evolution of the new guest process and why what you may be using right now may not be the latest option. Okay, so without going too far back, we know that before technology, people connected directly with people. The pastor would know everyone who came to church and would be able to visit most of their new members or at least give them a quick call. Most times, new visitors were local residents around the town and capturing information wasn't really needed. Then, as life became faster, cities became larger, and people moved more often, pastors were required to do more in less time, and guest books became an option. A guest book, or just a printed piece of paper, was used to write your name down when you first visited. Many churches still use this method, and it may be working okay for them, but for most churches, it's ineffective as most people don't fill it out or the information isn't useful. Quickly to follow was the evolution of the guest book into physical Connect cards. Let's talk about these a little more. Physical Connect cards are definitely here to stay. Whether you use these as your main option or as a backup, it's one of the best ways to break the ice if you have a guest services team. It's not a perfect system, but some churches have found success with using only physical Connect cards with the correct script. We are not going to focus on collecting data in person from a one-on-one perspective today, meaning one person to each guest or their family. Even though our process could be used this way too, today we're talking about an and strategy, using those other methods and adding new ones, not replacing them. One of the drawbacks of only using Connect cards is that someone still has to take that information and digitalize it manually. This takes time, and some churches may collect this data but end up doing nothing with it because of the work and time involved just in processing it. Another drawback is the issue of legibility. Your chances of capturing incorrect data for those guests are increased when you're having to read sloppy handwriting or if the scanner can't read or reads the information incorrectly. Again, we're not suggesting you replace physical Connect cards. We are only suggesting you enhance your current guest process. With the iPad revolution came kiosks, so what about those? Even kiosks at your church may be similar to physical Connect cards. They may alleviate some of the challenges with physical Connect cards since they are a digital solution, but they could also add more challenges too since they may feel impersonal or weird to people if there's no one around to help them. Then, if they're manned, there's the challenge of staffing those kiosks every week. People standing in line waiting to get to the kiosk could quickly create a bottleneck in the lobby as well. Kiosks can work great for guests to find out information about your church, but they may not be the best way to capture information. Then came digital Connect cards added to the church's website. A digital Connect card is essentially a Connect card that is added to your website with an easy-to-remember URL. For example, a church might use grace.org/next, using next as in the next steps the first-time guest might take to help make their URL easier to remember. Some churches might even elect to buy a domain name like gracenext.com to make their URL easier to remember. These digital Connect cards work well for first-time guests if you're coupling it with your online church program. It can also work fairly well if done by the main pastor on stage with a well-rehearsed and dedicated script. We have found that it takes repetition of that link for others to remember it and to actually take action. Digital Connect cards are perfect for internal use with your members, loyal visitors, or when your guests come back the third or fourth time. But for first-time guests, this isn't always the most effective way to capture information and then to follow up with them on. So here's what many churches started doing next, a sort of hybrid model. Let's take a quick look. Recognizing that using digital Connect cards is probably the least effective way to digitalize their guest engagement and capture process, most churches either gave up on the idea and returned to just using physical Connect cards, or they evolved with it. What came next was the hybrid model we just mentioned. It paired the digital Connect card on your website with texting. Essentially, you create a special trigger word called a keyword, and you ask your first-time guest to text that keyword to your number. The number is typically either a short code like 70000 or a local non-spammy number like the 214 number shown. When your guest texts the keyword to this number, an auto-reply text is sent immediately and automatically back to them. This text would include a short message and a link to the Digital Connect card on your website. This was very popular around 2013 to 2015, and many churches are still using this method with good success. But what about now? What is working now that most churches are not using yet? Just to quickly recap the past few slides, physical Connect cards used to be our only method to collect guest and members' information. Then an easier way was discovered, Digital Connect cards. They allowed you to collect your guest information digitally, and all you needed was an easy-to-remember website or link, and their information could be collected online. But more recently, it was discovered that you could text that same link to your guests, streamlining the process even more by taking out the steps in the middle. Now we have discovered a way to merge the two together, making it an even better guest experience and making it easier for your church to collect this valuable information. For many of you, you're still going to use physical Connect cards and check-in kiosks, and that's great, but if your unique challenge is capturing a large amount of data in the shortest time, and if it's a bonus for you if you can continue using physical and digital Connect cards, then stick around because we are going to show you how you can still use all of your current methods of collecting data and implement a new, personalized, and automated follow-up while you have a captive audience. Just to remind you again, as I know many of you might have a few objections, we are talking about a specific scenario. We are talking about capturing a large amount of data in the shortest time for first-time guests. People come to church to meet Jesus, and we need to eliminate any barrier or obstacle that may push them away. For some, that may include asking them to go to a kiosk or fill out your Connect cards before service. Even if you ask them to fill it out after service, people are busy, guests are anxious, and they may forget to stop by after service, or they may be in a hurry to get somewhere after church. We know that every church is different and does things a different way, but even the size of your church or your church's culture may not make a huge difference when trying to engage with first-time guests either. Generally, people like to have options, which is why we aren't saying that having these options are bad at all, just that maybe they shouldn't be your only method of collecting your new guest information. Goodness, that was a lot we covered already. Are you still with me? I hope that wasn't too much, but even if you ended this webinar now, but please don't, you should be clearer on the evolution of digitalizing the guest follow-up process. So now that we've clarified the history and provided some context, let's look at the 3 common mistakes to avoid when engaging with and following up with your guests digitally, why digital Connect cards are no longer the best option for capturing new guest information, and how you can implement our method for your church in a matter of minutes without changing your current new guest process. How would you like to improve your new guest experience with your church and save time and money by streamlining your processes? Okay, let's get right into mistake number 1. There is a concept called sales momentum. I know the word sales is not a typical word used for churches, but truthfully, we're always selling something, right? We sell the good news. Momentum is like rolling a boulder down the hill. You just need enough force to start the process, and the rest will happen on its own. Sales momentum suggests getting the least amount of information up front to ensure that person is going to move on to the next step, which propels them to the next step, and so on. Does your current process possibly overwhelm and hence stall the flow by asking for too much information too soon? The more you ask early on, the more intrusive it feels. People may second guess your intentions or decide, never mind, this is just too much right now. Digital Connect cards make it a tad easier as you can type, delete, and don't have to concentrate on penmanship. But if your capture process feels long or is long, you're going to get form abandonments or fake data because generally people hate filling out forms, so for some, this may already feel like a burden to them. Looking towards the Bible, we see that Jesus made a powerful first impression on people, just like you do from the moment your new guest walks through your door. And you want to continue with that through the rest of your service too. The first step to a great guest follow-up process is you want to make sure your guest follow-up works in unison with your guest services, meaning everyone follows the same steps and guidelines when helping new guests. For today, we're going to assume you've got this step covered already. Looking back to the Bible again, Jesus always simplified the process by just saying, leave what you're doing and simply follow me. Don't worry about everything else right now and all the details. This is so powerful because he knew that over time, through their relationship with him, the disciples would learn and know what it would mean to be a first-century Christian. The ask was always very simple and the barrier was very low. Put yourself in your new guest's shoes. Would you want to give out your phone number, email address, mailing address, family members' names, and everyone's date of birth that first visit? Would you know after one visit if you wanted to join a small group or start volunteering or trust someone enough to request prayer? Probably not. You would probably feel a bit overwhelmed just walking through the doors for the first time. Would you want to come back next weekend? Imagine if your church gathered information a little bit at a time as the trust was built and as they visited and got connected to your church gradually. Wouldn't that be a better and stronger relationship than one that was started off by collecting as much data as possible on their first visit? Which situation would make you feel better as a new guest? Moving on to mistake number 2. Another mistake churches make is when they try to speed date their new guests. You have to keep in mind that every weekend is someone's first weekend with you. We need to provide them with a first date experience, not a speed dating one. So what do I mean by speed dating? Speed dating is when you're only interested in getting to know someone quickly, and it's usually only surface level. It's difficult to actually start a relationship with a person this way. You're only checking off certain boxes and moving on to the next person. Church speed dating is engaging with your guests with the intention of getting them into your process and providing them with the most information about your church in the shortest possible amount of time. This can be overwhelming for your guest. We need to think of that first visit as the first date. Think about going on a first date. That is when we are sometimes the most creative, are the most attentive, and are laser focused on just connecting and building a relationship with a person we don't know that well yet. That's what your first time guest is likely to you. You don't know each other yet, but you would like to get to know each other better and start a relationship. Having a first date approach moves that stranger to a friend, and eventually they become like family. The key aspect in dating is to at least get to the second date, then the third, then it becomes easier after that. For churches, your guest follow-up process has to be more aligned with this and not with a speed dating atmosphere. Remember, we are not competing with other churches. We all share a common goal, and there are plenty of people that need Jesus. But one of the big pushbacks we see over and over again is from people who are following a one-size-fits-all template. An expert said you need to text, call, send a coffee mug, write a handwritten note, or send a Starbucks gift card as part of your intense 6-week follow-up process. And I'm sure this can work, but what if it could work even better? What if you can spread out collecting their information from one form to 2 forms in a longer process? Is this not what you would do when dating? People are people, and people function the same way. Even if they give you their address, they might hate the idea of having to give it to you when they don't really know you yet. Remember, you don't have to have their address the first visit. Instead of hand-delivering a gift to your guest's doorstep, give your first and second time guests those gifts when they're actually there in person. All right, moving on to mistake number 3. Mistake number 3 is when the church's process is church-focused and not guest-focused. Is your process easy for you but challenging for your guests? Give them options to choose from. Every person will respond differently to different options. That's why we encourage having an and strategy versus an either-or strategy. Churches should be using physical connect cards and check-in kiosks and digital capture options, not either-or. You also need to be testing out different methods to see what works for you and your church. Don't just follow the crowd and the experts, because really there is no one-size-fits-all method for the guest follow-up process. You need to be able to be flexible and tweak your process to your guests' needs and wants. So start first by defining your process on paper before rolling out the tools. What is step 1, step 2, step 3, and so on, and who is going to be in charge of each step? And don't just stick with what seems to work versus actually tracking the data, because data won't lie to you. After reflecting on all of this a bit, ask yourself, is your current process really working? Is there anything that you could tweak or add to make it even better? Churches sometimes get stuck on this process works well for us, or we get all the information we need, and they don't look at it any further. Try and remember to view your process from the guest perspective like Jesus did, minimal but intentional. If 5 people come to your church and only 3 fill out your Connect card, then that's 60%. But what if you can get a better number than that just by adding more options for your guests? Remember we talked about when using digital Connect cards by themselves, you need your guests to know the website and have access to it, so it needs to be an easy-to-remember website. The biggest issue with this is you are relying on them to remember to go back to it to give you the information that you want. But people don't really like giving out their personal information in the first place, since they're usually not sure how exactly their information will be used. The other option is to ask the guest to text a keyword to your number to have a link to your Digital Connect card sent back to them. Like we mentioned earlier, this was the best practice back in the day, but the guest would still have to text, click, load, fill out all the information, and hit submit after they're finished. They may decide to do it later, they may forget, and they may fall through the cracks. So take a good look at your current guest process and ask yourself, is it centered around the new guest experience and making a good first impression? Is it letting them know you truly care about them as people and not just as a head count? Or is it centered around your church's process, checking off all the boxes that need to be filled out, making it easier on the church staff and volunteers? Imagine if you could do both. How much better would you serve your guests and your church if you could center your new guest process around making it a great experience and making it easier for your church? Well, you can, and I'm going to show you how. But before I do, I think you can agree that you can find a massive amount of value inside this presentation. But you may also feel overwhelmed with it all, which is totally understandable. I promise in a few minutes I'm going to share exactly how my clients have had success connecting with their new guests too. Imagine, instead of asking people to follow a link and fill out a form in order to collect their contact information, what if we could collect it automatically via text in just a matter of seconds? Instead of asking them to go online and fill out a form, you just have them text a simple keyword. So if you didn't do this earlier, do it now. Try this out for yourself. Text the keyword HOPE to our number on the screen and you will see exactly what I'm talking about. The same thing you experienced earlier or are experiencing now will happen for your new guests too. They will automatically get the welcome message you set up, something like, "Welcome to church, we're so glad you're here." Then they'll be asked for their first name. "We would love to connect with you. Please let us know your full name." After they reply, their name is collected and added to their profile automatically. Then they are automatically sent a message with their name auto-filled in the message asking for their email address. It could be something like, "Thank you, John. Give us a way to contact you. Please reply with your email address." After they reply again, their email is also added to their profile and they receive one final thank you message from you. "Thank you so much for visiting us today, John. We look forward to seeing you again soon." And this all happens automatically and immediately, just like you experienced a few seconds ago. This is the future. In fact, 99% of clients who tried our strategy stopped using Digital Connect cards. I'm not going to keep you in suspense any longer. Let me introduce to you the latest evolution in the guest follow-up process, Digital Connect texts. If you really want to increase your number of new guest responses and connect with them on a more personal level, then you've got to check out our Digital Connect texts. We can help you decrease your admin time and streamline and automate your new guest follow-up process effortlessly. And it can work with physical Connect cards and check-ins via your integrations as well. If you didn't have to spend so much time chasing down your new guests or getting them to get plugged in, imagine the other areas of your church you could concentrate on. Could you spend more time connecting with these guests on a more personal level and really getting to know their needs? Think about how much time this could free up for you personally or for your church staff and volunteers. But you still may have some hesitations. You may ask, what if we simplify our process and they don't come back? So here are some things to keep in mind. First, we are not in competition with other Bible-based Christians. We all share a common goal to get people connected to Jesus. People will go where they are comfortable and where they feel a connection. Your church won't be for everybody. You can't serve everyone's needs, and you also can't know what's going on in their lives. Perhaps they were in transition or just passing through town. But doing the right thing is always the best way. Plus, who knows, they might return a year later. They will remember your church and how you treated them if you don't turn them off too soon. Really quickly, I want to share with you what a few of our clients have said after using Pastor's Line at their church. Pastor's Line has totally changed not only my workflow, but it's taken our personal factor up 10 times. Just with our welcome process, we have gone from a 40% read rate to a 40% conversation rate. That's just crazy. That's so awesome, right? To hear that they went from their messages just being read and received to having actual meaningful conversations with their guests and members is huge. Another pastor said, Pastor's Line has been a fantastic tool which has enhanced communication with our church family. As with any tool, the secret is learning how to use it effectively. I have been most excited when I see my church members telling their very own unchurched friends to text pray to our Pastor's Line number and have them join our prayer sessions. How cool is that? Their church members now have an easy-to-share tool to spread the word and get their friends connected. This is what it's all about. Another one said, the text messaging service we use is pastorsline.com. Excellent web-based interface. You can send text and voice broadcasts. Very easy to use. One of the best new tools I've integrated in my evangelism is what Pastor's Line provided. Can't praise it enough. We love being able to give you as many tools in your belt as possible. Having the ability to communicate through text and voice is a very powerful thing. We get really excited when we hear all the different ways churches are using our features. It is so encouraging to me because I get to talk to clients every day with stories just like these. Earlier, I had asked you to open up the Q&A box and post any questions that you have during this presentation. I promise I will respond to them via email or text as soon as I can. Okay, first I'm going to answer the most common questions I get. How much is a credit? So a credit is basically one text. One text out is one credit used. One text in is one credit used as well. So if you send 10 people a text, which is defined as 160 characters or less, that will cost you 10 credits. If all 10 people reply back to you, that will cost you 10 credits also. Do credits expire? No, your credits never expire and they actually roll over each month. That's the beauty of our system. You can accumulate text as you go, helping you save up for when you have increased usage like around Easter or Christmas. How do I know which plan to choose? You don't have to be too worried about choosing the exact plan your church will need for the next year. We actually allow you to upgrade or downgrade your plan as needed. So if you want to start out on the $25 a month plan, see how that feels for your church, and then decide where to go from there, you absolutely can do that. You can also purchase buckets of credits as you go if you'd like. Does the staff have to share the same login information? No, you can actually add as many users as you need, each with their own personal login, and you have the ability to restrict each user according to their needs. Is there a contract? Nope, there is no contract ever. As I mentioned earlier, you can cancel, upgrade, or downgrade at any time. How can we set the data capture workflow from the demo up? It's really easy, and we do have guides. However, all new accounts come with 2 campaigns that are ready to go. You can go in there, tweak it, and use it this weekend. Do you integrate with Church Community Builder? Who else do you integrate with? Yes, and PCO, MailChimp, Elvanto, and are looking into Fellowship One, ACS, Ministry Platform, and many others. When someone replies, where does it go? We are web-based, so you can log in from any browser or through our mobile app and read and reply to your messages there. You can even get push notifications or emails when someone replies. How do you compare with other vendors? We believe the church market space is large enough to allow each vendor to focus on specific solutions to excel at. We are focused on church communication and ensuring we build integrations and tools you need to implement your process. You'll find that we are also more flexible for churches who need that. I do think we're priced very competitive and we typically offer more options than most, but we are focused on communication to mobile devices. While most just offer texting, we also offer voice. If you want to see specific comparisons, you can visit our website, pastorsline.com/compare. Do you pick a number for me or can we choose? You will choose your number and you can even add multiple. Each person will have a unique number or you can set it up where they can share it. This is probably another place where our application is more powerful than most. Can I use my own cell phone number? Yes and no. You can port numbers into Pastor's Line, but we would then control all your texts and calls. What you can also do is use your local landline church number and just add SMS. So the local calls will still work as normal, but you will be able to send and receive text on the number you already own. That's for text. For voice broadcast, you can actually use your Pastor's Line number, your cell phone number, or your landline as a caller ID when sending a voice broadcast. You also offer voice services. What are those? Your account acts as a virtual phone line for your church. Not only can you use it to text, you can also make and receive phone calls and send out voice broadcasts. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you learned a lot and are excited to implement these ideas and strategies into your church's processes right away. But just before you go, if you're still a little unsure about all of this, then let's set up a time to talk. This new guest strategy session will take 15 to 30 minutes and you will be speaking with me personally. So who is the strategy session best for? This is great for mega churches. We offer advanced multi-user, multi-campus, and multi-number features that can work well for large churches since we can easily implement our tool into their already established process. During this call, we can brainstorm how to implement Pastor's Line into your existing process seamlessly. This strategy session is useful for smaller churches too. Smaller churches appreciate our price point and that they can still have access to most of the advanced features for a small price. Most of our competitors charge premiums for different integrations, and ours includes them. On our strategy call, we would be able to brainstorm ways you can communicate better, efficiently, and according to your church's communication goals while still keeping the cost down and within your budget. This strategy session is for any church who wants to reach people better. We can brainstorm ways your church can implement Pastor's Line into your process or talk about best practices when communicating with your church in general. It doesn't have to be in relation to using Pastor's Line. We operate with a small team approach. We are easily accessible online and we work very closely with all of our clients. So if you are looking for help communicating better and more efficiently, then let's set up a strategy call. But this strategy session would not be for churches that are already 100% convinced that their digital church is not as important as their physical church. There is no strategy in sending mass communications out. So if your church only wants to use Pastor's Line to send mass text to your members with newsletter type information, this strategy session would not be for you. You can absolutely do this with Pastor's Line, but for this strategy session, we're focusing on relationship building and communicating. We are an ever-evolving, always improving tool that can be implemented 1,000 different ways. So churches that are afraid of change or are not willing to try new things at least once would probably not benefit from this type of strategy session. If your church is focused only on free tools and thinks spending as little as 50 cents per day for an easy-to-use tool is wasting God's money, then this strategy session is not for you. There are ways to make free work for you, but you will spend more time and create more frustrations than you need to. So if the money is more important than the communication goal, this session is not for you. Book a time with me and I can answer all your questions. Take a picture of the screen so you can remember the site later, or go to calendly.com/AnnHeath to book an appointment with me to talk about this more. My schedule can only handle 10 calls over the next few days, so apply now. Again, thank you for joining us today. We hope you learned a lot and are excited to try our Digital Connect text in your church this weekend. I look forward to working with you soon.